Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to my new lecture. So, for today, our topic is the last step of aerobic respiration, that is RETC, which stands for Respiratory Electron Transport Chain. Respiratory Electron Transport Chain, or also known as oxidative phosphorylation. So, what is respiratory electron transport chain? How can we define it? So, coming into its definition, the last step, what is RETC? So, the last step of aerobic respiration, in which the reduced coenzymes, that is NADH2 and FADH2, produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle, are oxidized in the presence of molecular oxygen O2 and yield ATP, is called respiratory electron transport chain. As you know that coenzymes NADH2 and FADH2 in the Krebs cycle and NADH2 are reduced in the Krebs cycle and they store energy. Now they carry this energy to electron transport chain where it is converted into ATP. So thus coenzymes work as energy carriers, right? So NADH2 in the what is respiratory electron transport chain? It is the last step of aerobic respiration, in which the reduced coenzymes NADH2 and FADH2 produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle are oxidized. Here these reduced coenzymes, here in this last step, these reduced coenzymes produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle are oxidized. That is, hydrogens are removed from these reduced coenzymes and they again become, these coenzymes become oxidized, right? And the energy produced during this oxidation is used in the synthesis of ATP from ADP and inorganic phosphate in the presence of molecular oxygen. So the last step of aerobic respiration, in which the reduced coenzymes NADH2 and FADH2 produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle are oxidized in the presence of molecular oxygen and yield ATP, is called respiratory electron transport chain. Locations or occurrence, where does electron transport chain occur? So respiratory electron transport chain ETC occurs in the inner mitochondrial membrane, that is cristae. And what is oxidative phosphorylation? The synthesis of ATP in the presence of oxygen as a result of energy released by the electron transport chain or system is called oxidative phosphorylation. As you studied in the definition, that in the electron transport chain ATP is yielded, ATP is synthesized, ATP is generated, and this process occurs in the presence of molecular oxygen. So this synthesis of ATP in the presence of oxygen as a result of energy released by the electron transport chain or system is called oxidative phosphorylation. So there are three types of phosphorylation. First, you studied photophosphorylation in light reaction of photosynthesis, substrate level phosphorylation in glycolysis and Krebs cycle, and now this is the third type of phosphorylation, that is oxidative phosphorylation in this electron transport chain of the respiration. So now with the help of this diagram, we will explain the process of respiratory electron transport chain. As you know that the last step in aerobic respiration is the oxidation of reduced coenzymes NADH2 and FADH2 produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle by molecular oxygen. by this molecular oxygen, this one, O2, by this molecular oxygen, right? So the pairs of hydrogen atoms released from glucose during glycolysis and Krebs cycle of aerobic respiration are not received directly by oxygen. These hydrogens are not directly, the hydrogens removed from the glucose are not received directly by the oxygen, but pass along a series of electron carriers called coenzyme Q and cytochromes. This series of electron carriers make respiratory electron transport chain. The final electron acceptor at the end of electron transport chain is oxygen forming water. Look at this one, this green. Various molecules involved in the electron transport chain are NADH2, FADH2, coenzyme Q, cytochrome B, cytochrome C, cytochrome A, and cytochrome B, cytochrome C, cytochrome A, and cytochrome 3. The coenzyme Q and cytochromes are alternately reduced and oxidized, alternately reduced, gain electron, and oxidized, lose electron, reduced, gain electron, lose electron, alternately reduced, gain electron, lose electron, right? Electrons are passed along a series of carriers as they lose energy. Some of this energy is used in the synthesis of ATP from ADP and inorganic phosphate. At the end, the oxygen accepts electrons and hydrogen ions to form water, this green one, right? So in the process of electron transport chain, this is reduced NADH2 molecule, this is reduced FADH2 molecule. These reduced coenzyme NADH2 and FADH2, they are oxidized, that is their hydrogens are removed from them. So now this NADH2 is oxidized into NAD and FADH2 is oxidized into FAD plus, right? These hydrogen are changed into hydrogen ions, electrons are removed from the hydrogen, so hydrogen is changed into protons, hydrogen ions, and electrons. These electrons now passes through a series of electron carriers called coenzyme Q and cytochromes, right? And this series of electron carriers make electron transport chain. And these electron carriers, coenzyme Q and cytochromes, they are alternately reduced and oxidized. Look into this. These electrons are taken up by the oxidized coenzyme Q, also known as UQ-UBquinone. So the coenzyme Q is now reduced, that is gain electron. In the next step, the coenzyme Q is oxidized and now the electrons are taken up by the cytochrome B. So the cytochrome B is reduced and the coenzyme Q is oxidized. In the next step, Now the cytochrome C gains these electrons, is reduced, and the cytochrome B is oxidized. Then the cytochrome A is reduced and the cytochrome C is oxidized. Then cytochrome A3 is reduced, gain electron, and cytochrome A is oxidized. So the coenzyme Q and cytochromes are alternately reduced and oxidized, reduced and oxidized. Electrons, as you see that electrons are fast along these carriers and they lose energy. Some of this energy is used in the synthesis of ATP from ADP and inorganic phosphate. At the end, oxygen accepts electrons and protons to form water. This is actually an energy diagram. Look at this arrow. This shows relative energy level. So here molecules are at high energy level, and here molecules are at low energy level. So in the electron transport chain, each next molecule is at lower energy level than the previous one. For example, cytochrome A is at low energy level as compared to cytochrome C, and cytochrome A3 is at low energy level as compared to cytochrome A, right? So in the electron transport chain, each next molecule is at low energy level than the previous one. And note that 3 ATP molecules are formed in this process. 1, 2, 3. One here at the coenzyme Q ends, right? Second between the cytochrome B and cytochrome C, and the third cytochrome A and cytochrome 3. So now what is cytochrome? CYT stands for cytochrome. It is an iron containing protein. It has two forms. It is an iron containing protein. So this iron has two forms. Fe triple positive, it is its oxidized form, while Fe is double positive, it is its reduced form. Ferric oxidized form, ferrous reduced form. ATP gain, typically electron transport chain produces 32 ATP. 32 ATP. So this is the electron transport chain of aerobic respiration, in which the oxidation of reduced coenzymes NADH2 and FADH2 produced in glycolysis and Krebs cycle occur by molecular oxygen with the synthesis of ATP. So this is all about the electron transport chain, the last step of aerobic respiration. Thank you very much. Now at the last, this is the general sketch of aerobic or cellular respiration. This is a cell. We take nutrients. Nutrients are the materials, elements and compounds that organism obtain and use for maintaining life. So you know that there are two types of nutrients, macro, micro. So glucose is a nutrient, glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. In the first step of aerobic or cellular respiration, this glucose is broken down into two molecules of pyruvic acid 3-carbon molecule known as glycolysis. Glyco means glucose, lysis means splitting. These pyruvic acid molecules are transported to the mitochondria, and here through linked reaction, if you look into it closely, these pyruvic acid molecules through linked reaction are changed into 2-carbon molecule known as acetyl-CoA. The acetyl-CoA molecules then these high energy acetyl-CoA molecules are completely oxidized in the Krebs cycle into carbon dioxide and water, generating reduced NADH2 and FADH2. In the last step, the reduced NADH2 and FADH2 coenzymes produced in the glycolysis and Krebs cycle are oxidized by molecular oxygen to yield ATP. This process is called respiratory electron transport chain. It takes place in the inner mitochondrial membrane. This is actually mitochondria. This is its outer membrane, which is smooth. This is inner membrane, is folded inwards, giving rise to extensions, outgrowths called cristae. And this is mitochondrial matrix. What is mitochondrial matrix? The region enclosed by inner mitochondrial membrane is called mitochondrial matrix. It contains DNA, RNA, ribosomes, and enzymes. So this is a general sketch of the aerobic or cellular respiration.